Dungeons and Dragons, Satan's Game. These are the experiences of two individuals as we fight our way through various evil and blood-soaked horrors known as D&D. Look and weep at the evil that awaits us. Will we survive the horrors?
I hope so.
Spoiler warning for those of you who dare to set foot. You will be spoiled.
Oh, yes.
But we'll see you at the D&D game. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Tabletop Horror.
Ooh.
Spooky. Ooh. So today's film we're covering is Knight Chills.
Mm-hmm.
This is a film released in 2001 by Catherine Hicks.
Mm-hmm.
This release is a double feature with Hollywood Vampire from Brain Damage Films. Though technically out of print, it's still not terribly hard to find, like in the $10 to $20 range. I got this for about $14. The movies come in separate discs. Matter of fact, there they are. As you can see, they even have their own disc art.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool. It's got the nice back there. So I like this set. I mean, it's a nice set. And there's not a lot of special features, especially on Night Chills. There's trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some trailers for some other brain damage stuff. And that's it. It has scene selections, which were huge back in the old days of DVD, because, you couldn't do that on VHS.
Yeah.
But, So Dave, from Inside Movies Galore, he wanted us to also point out that this has had a couple other releases. They went from Brain Damage to Brentwood, and this was released on a 4-pack called The State of Shock. I'll put a picture of it right here. And then also released by Pendulum Pictures, an 100-movie set called Bloody Night. Which makes sense, It's just night with an N instead of a K.
Mm-hmm.
But you could easily change that.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, this is about a bunch of college students who role play with their professor after hours, after school hours.
Yes, I love your wording there. It makes this sound much more exciting than it actually is.
A strange fellow named John takes the game a bit too seriously and ends up going on a killing spree after he takes his own life and comes back from the dead as his character.
As you do.
And the only way to end his bloody quest is to give him that sweet, sweet XP.
Or hope he rolls a fumble.
So let's talk a little bit about the story. This is where I need to pull up my actual resource list for this.
Get it together. Get it together. Get it Miss Kasuga. Get it together. Get it Miss Kasuga. Miss Kasuga. Were you listening? No. Come on. Get it together, will ya?
But I do think that it was an interesting story.
Yeah.
We got cats going off.
Indeed.
But I do think that the story for this was decent enough. It was coherent.
It was. Mostly.
I mean, it was exactly what I said. It followed through.
I love it when a plan comes together.
I'm not exactly sure, where we were going with it.
So basically, you've got their professor, he's actually a high school teacher, who had taught them a couple of years previously and then established a gaming club. I think it sounded like he was kicked off campus in a very rude and unceremonious way. I guess they were trying to do a gaming club on campus. And
it's too much of that, evil D&D.
Exactly. Basically, the teacher is treated like shit for daring to like this game, let alone show it to other people. You got John, who works at a gaming store, I believe.
Yeah.
And has no life. You've got these two, I'm not going to remember most of their names. Basically, you got these two dinguses. One of them is a total dingus, and another one's kind of half dingus. And they are like frat boy types. Mm-hmm. One of them works for his father at the Christmas tree lot, and the other one
works at a convenience store or something like that?
Yes, it's like a liquor store, convenience store,
and then there's
something
the
like that.
stoner guy and his girlfriend.
The stoner guy and
I
his
love
girlfriend.
the stoner Pledge of Allegiance, right here.
We are the Burnouts, proud and true. We grow our own weed and we smoke it too. I know one day that we'll all die, but when we go, we'll all go high.
I don't know why, but I love that scene. We didn't get to rewatch it here, but you viewers will get to see that cut. I even made sure that I put in when it is, so I'll show Jake again later. But I don't know why, but it made me laugh. But he's not quite abusive to his girlfriend, but he's definitely dismissive of her.
He is a dude who likes sex and weed and has very little other ambition or desire.
Monkey's out of the bottle, man.
She puts up with him. I guess he must be good in bed or something. She mostly puts up with him. She comes to this group basically on his arm and is kind of the hot one in the group. And she is, in the game, the object, like the main character, John, is a knight in an order who's dedicated his life
Court of the Rose
to her, basically. Her character.
Yeah.
But he has started to cross that over into real life, and it's wigging her out. And then there's another girl who's actually very sweet and good and just your typical gamer girl character.
Then the wife of the husband.
The wife of the husband, who's kind of, a little mildly standoffish to John, but mostly likes the group and thinks they're all good kids and is glad her husband's reaching out. She's just a little kind of like wishes that more time, I guess, for her. And they have a kid, and their kid loves John. It's like his
squire.
His squire is the one human being that treats him good. Like actually treats him good. Because he hero worships
everybody
him.
else is treats him the professor treats him okay.
He treats him decently, and so does the wife of the professor, and again, the one girl is actually fairly nice to him, but she mostly just ignores him.
But then the other girl,
one girl's a bitch to him, and she's a bitch to her boyfriend for not being more of an ass to him. And then the other two are just asses.
I'll say this about the stoner guy.
Yeah.
He's got what is on his mind, but he's just like, hey, he's all right. He does his thing.
Yeah.
We all have fun. What's wrong with that?
You do what you do, right? Yeah.
Because he likes the game, and they all like to do that. So.
And I was kind of impressed later on that he actually figures everything out. Because he actually knows the lore of this other guy's character. And it's like, okay.
That was one of the things he actually genuinely has an interest in was the role-playing.
Right.
But what was it? I do think that this does have a lot of slasher tropes from the 80s and 90s. And
I'm sorry, I was just looking at your screen there and I saw Martin Scorsese and I'm like, the hell does he have to do with this? I forgot you had a...
But I do think that this is one of the things that makes it a much more solid film than Mazes and Monsters or that really unfocused fever dream called Skullduggery that we watched.
Yes.
This one actually does have a fairly decent, just straightforward plot. It's simple. It's tropes, these slasher tropes, and then they go and get killed. This guy suicides himself because he feels like killing himself will allow him to then fully become into the game, and somehow he does. I still don't understand how that happened, and they give no explanation. He just starts appearing as a knight.
Sometimes you just have to believe.
Am I going mad?
Or did the word think escape your lips?
Apparently. And he just starts whacking people, just hacking them up with his sword.
And leaving a rose at the scene.
Yeah. And it kind of gets unfocused after that point. It's just kind of hanging around until they kill off the characters. And then it gets to the end where really the ending is not all that dissimilar to the ending of Mazes and Monsters, where they're talking Robbie down from the from the building. The GM basically takes control and says, okay, your quest is done, leave the squire here. And then they, of course, now their child is fully invested in the game. Because, evil game.
Yeah, I actually kind of like the ending. But anyway.
It was, like I say, I thought it was fairly decent. I felt like John was the kind of character that was a red flag at the very beginning because, I mean, Robbie at least seemed like he was somewhat together at the beginning, but John did not understand, like, life from reality most of the time. I wasn't even sure whether he was, like, totally involved, really. And that just...
You had to wonder.
But, I thought the plot was reasonable. I thought that it did have a lot more of that anti-D&D sentiment, at least shown. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if it really had an anti-D&D message.
It definitely spent a lot of time, and actually you were talking about unfocused. I think that is a little bit true. I think some of the side characters had a little more screen time than you would typically expect. And a lot of that was given over to them just trashing the gaming lifestyle. Like, oh, you're involved with this game. Oh, a lot of it was the teacher and his wife talking about how much their lives are being negatively impacted by the spotlight that's now on them for, of course, every newscast makes mention of this like it's a big important part of the story.
Or John's mother saying, like, if he hadn't gotten that game, he would still be alive.
And it's such a convincing performance she gave. And actually, one of the biggest examples of both that and the, we'll charitably say uneven acting in this, is when the decent girl, the gamer girl, is, I guess she's an RA at her college or something, and this girl comes to her to let her know about the other two getting killed. And she comes in, like, genuinely concerned, like, really like a friend, and trying to, and then something comes up about the gaming, and then it's like someone flipped a switch, and suddenly she's in complete bitch mode.
She was cursing out like the professor and the wife.
Exactly. And then, of course, she gets hacked to pieces as soon as she leaves the room. And for a minute there, this was one part where the story lost me a little bit. Maybe I faded out from being tired or something, but I didn't at first connect that it was her that got attacked. And I actually thought that he was planning to attack the other girl. And it wasn't until later that I heard them say that, oh, she said, the both of them had talked about it being a guy with a sword. And I was like, oh, he didn't attack her. Good. Because at first I was like, why the hell are you attacking her? She didn't do nothing to you.
Yeah.
It's
the only one that he really left alive, other than because he actually protected the bitchy girl.
Yeah.
Because he was in love with her.
Yeah.
But he confesses his love right before he decides to kill himself, and she just shoots him down like nobody's business. And I mean, it's whatever. And he just basically saves her, and he doesn't go after the professor and his wife.
And he just comes to collect his
he
squire.
just comes to collect his squire. As I said, I felt like the story was more interesting than the others that we've seen. I feel like it was more competently written
Yeah.
than the ones we've seen so far, and I think it was presented better. I mean, it held my interest a heck of a lot more than either of the other two. Now, I'm not going to totally go against Mazes and Monsters. It does have a place in history, but it's not a good film. And this isn't a great film either. But if you're looking at, if we're looking at a bunch of B slashers and stuff like that, there are a lot worse films than this.
Oh yes, there are.
So
There are better, but there are worse.
shoot, I actually like this better than Hollywood Vampire, which I did watch. Also,
I haven't seen that.
It's all right. It is. I wanted to look at it just in case it had some sort of attachment to Vampire the Masquerade, which one of our films will be attached to that. But no, thank God it did not. So we do not have to cover Hollywood Vampire.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
We will be covering a similar film, but that's a little later down the line.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead into, I guess, production values. I did not like the lighting in places. The lighting was crap in places.
Well, the production overall was kind of weak, but you're right, the lighting was pretty bad.
But again,
That's one of the reasons why I wasn't sure who was getting killed in that one scene.
because there were some scenes that were extremely dark.
Yeah.
But again, better than the previous two films in many ways. Though I did think that the cave lighting in Mazes and Monsters was fairly competent.
I was going to say, as far as the basic production, Mazes and Monsters was probably the better one. But in terms of, like... in terms of scene, in terms of the sets and whatever, this one was good.
Even looks like the quality of the film was better in this one, which it probably was because it's more recent.
Yeah.
Because you could tell a lot of degradation on the film for Mazes and Monsters. Yeah. This one did not have any of that. Skullduggery. Skullduggery was bad enough to where we didn't even know what was going on most of the time.
Yeah.
What happened?
And speaking of looking at the editing with this on that too, I thought the editing was much better. Again, it's not the best, but I think
they could have trimmed it a little bit again for better focus. But honestly, I don't mind a meandering story that gets into the side characters, but most people like a little more focus. And I would say, coming from my perspective, a couple nips would have been fine, but I think some people would have needed some tucks as well.
So what'd you think of the actual knight character costume with the horse and all that?
Decent.
I thought it looked okay.
Yeah.
I mean, was it convincing that it felt like his character had come back from the grave?
I'm not sure that was... I don't know.
There was a part of me that thought he had faked his death and just came back as and just started, killing people in his night costume until you got to the end and it actually shows the portal to the other side. And you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, he definitely died. He definitely came back as his character. So there's definitely the otherworldly thing. I still don't, that has been totally unexplained throughout the whole movie about how that got done.
As far as...
like how he became like his character.
Well, like I said, he probably just believed in it.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die. Please.
Maybe.
Only
you just believe.
Yeah.
You can come back as your character and slaughter everybody.
Yes, exactly. I mean, haven't there been slasher films with that premise?
I'm sure there has.
I mean, isn't that the basic premise of Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah, but he didn't come back as a D&D character.
No, but he
it's
did
like a spirit of vengeance, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe that, yeah.
Now, it is interesting that he does operate by the rules of his character. That is interesting.
Because he's not a mindless killing machine. He has a particular quest and all that.
And even a particular timeline and schedule. Like the one guy says, he has to do it by the winter solstice. And so if they make it through the winter solstice, they're good. So that's kind of an interesting... because if it had just been him coming back for vengeance, he might have been a little more willing to play around with that.
Anything else on production design or effects? Anything? It's not really a lot. And I actually, this is the first of the 3 films that I have to say the music wasn't terribly memorable.
No, it wasn't.
I mean, it was all right. I mean, it did what it was supposed to do. I didn't feel it and go, God, chalkboard. But, you know.
It did. I think it fit the story. I think it did a fine job of setting the scene. But yes, it did not rise above. It did not leave a mark, really. Yeah.
But still, overall, a fun film. So I guess the next points are to go ahead and talk about our final thoughts, and then we'll give it our scores.
Okay.
So my final thoughts, Night Chills is kind of the last of an era, so to speak, for better or for worse. An era that kind of started with Mazes and Monsters and has kind of been rounded out by something that I guess tried to revive the old school angst against the system. Be it to poke fun at it a little bit, be it the fact that, hey, this is a good idea for a slasher, I'm not sure.
I'm inclined to think that.
But at the end, it's a decent enough slasher. And for those that are interested in a gamer-related slasher movie, you could do worse than Night Chills. How about your final thoughts?
I'm inclined to agree. I think that basically it was probably some people were kind of trying to think of what would be a good slasher premise that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
We've never seen a D&D game gone horribly wrong, have we?
Well, not in the movies.
Well, no. So maybe that's what they were thinking. They might have been drawing on the Satanic Panic, the fact that it's quite possible the filmmakers were trying to say something negative about gaming. It's possible that they were just like, this was a bunch of bullshit, and that's why they had all these characters calling out the general pessimism about it. It's possible. Who knows? We didn't find a lot of background on it. Is it a good or memorable film? Not really. Is it a decent slasher that you can kill a couple hours with and not be too upset at your wasted time? Sure. Do I think it did a better job of telling a role-play related story than the other two? Well, hell's yeah, better than Skullduggery in that regard. And yes, I would say better than Mazes and Monsters in that regard.
Well, now's the time we get to rate these.
Okay.
So as always, we do a 1 to 10 rating scale.
Okay.
We do it on 2 sections. The first is how close is this to actual tabletop role-playing? How close is it to the actual thing? How much of it is utilized in the plot? Is it a tabletop role-playing movie? Now, oddly enough, I have to give this a much stronger score. I'm not going straight D&D because we're going to be covering a lot of them that they're not using D&D as the source. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm saying tabletop RPG. Mm-hmm. And I think that they nailed the tabletop RPG session. Obviously, the people who watch this know what that is. They didn't just look at it and go, ooh, scary thing, like they did with Mazes and Monsters, or even worse, Skullduggery, which I don't even know what they were doing with that. But I do feel like this one's a pretty strong one. I don't think it's like 100% on, but it's a much closer connection to tabletop RPGs than we've had before. Mm-hmm. I would give this one actually a 7 out of 10. Not 100%. The movie is mainly about the slasher, but it has a very strong RPG connection, and the slasher's motives are very strongly linked to the RPG. But that's my tabletop score. Wow, my first 7.
So we're doing one at a time, I guess?
Yep, so what would you say for your tabletop score?
I would say...
1, 2?
Oh, hell, better than that. I would say that in large part, it does deal directly with the game, but it does have long segments that pull away from it. I'd say 7 is a pretty good rating. I will go with that.
Like I say, that I do think we're going to be getting closer as time goes on. We'll be getting to higher scores. We might even get a perfect 10. But so far, it's the closest we've come. And sadly, we're going to be pulling a little bit further away in the next couple. But let's talk about our LARPing score.
Okay.
So, there's not a lot of LARPing here. I guess you could say when he comes back as the knight, that's the ultimate undead LARPing experience.
Yeah.
Where he becomes his character literally and goes after them. But that's a really loose connection. I would say it's even looser than Skullduggery. Because at least Skullduggery, the guy is actually acting out as his character. He thinks he's his character.
Yeah.
And this one, he just becomes his character as an undead monster. I would say I put this as a 3. It's just enough to where I could say it's a slight connection, but not so I can't say it's 100% like none, but definitely not strong enough for me to actually consider it even LARPing, to tell you the truth.
I would say none of the characters really do any LARPing. I don't recall any of the other characters doing any. And if you look at it, live action role play. So the main character, when he goes around as his character, he is not role playing. As you said, he is now the character.
Yet at the end, he's interacting with the GM.
Yes,
like
but
his character.
He is no longer role playing. He is the role. And so maybe role still counts. But he's not playing.
That's why I gave it a 3.
And he's no longer alive, so he's definitely not live action. So
undead action role play.
Exactly. So 1, arguably 2 out of 4. That's a 2.5, arguably. But we'll have to round down for the other kids, so I'll go 2.
All right, so let's see how strong we did. So for Tabletop Connection, it's easy math. It's a 7. Pretty strong connection. The strongest we've had before. It will get stronger, but not yet. Let's see. And for LARPing, a 2.5 essentially, if I recall correctly. Which, and we will round up because we're being nice, and I will round it to a 3.
Very well.
So
will be nice.
So barely a connection to LARPing, just enough that you could say, kind of from a distance if you're drunk, maybe.
That'd be more like 1.
But still fun enough movie, fairly enjoyable. But next week, we're going to be getting into something more entertaining. We're going to be pulling away from the direct connection somewhat, but yet closer in other aspects. As we cover Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
All right.
We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Ah!